Some people don't just walk into a room, they absorb it. Every sigh, every nervous laugh, every flicker of tension in the air seeps into their chest like water filling a cup. They sense what others hide. They feel storms that never make a sound. And while everyone else seems untouched, they carry the invisible weight of 1,000 moods that aren't even theirs. They smile to appear normal, but inside they are exhausted not from their own pain, but from feeling the whole world's. They wish they could turn it off just for a day. But empathy is not a switch, it's a floodgate. So they retreat into silence, not because they hate people, but because they feel too much of them. This is the quiet ache of the empath, the soul who feels everything too deeply. Empaths are not defined by kindness alone. They are defined by sensitivity so profound that it becomes a language of its own. They don't just see emotions, they inhabit them. When someone nearby trembles in fear, their body mirrors it. When a friend hides heartbreak behind a laugh, they feel a knot in their own chest. The empath doesn't analyze emotions. They absorb them like a sponge in a storm. In a crowded room, they sensed the invisible climate. The laughter sounds too loud, forced. The smiles carry weight. A single look, a pause in someone's voice, a subtle change in rhythm. These earthquakes to an empath. They can feel when a relationship is dying before words confirm it. When someone is lying before logic detects it. Their world is not made of facts, but of vibrations. But that gift, so beautiful in its purity, comes with an unbearable cost. Because to feel everything means to carry too much. And the world, though noisy, rarely notices those who absorb its silence. They begin to drift between worlds, half in their own body, half inside others. They want to help, to heal, to understand, yet every act of compassion cuts a little deeper into their own energy. They become a mirror reflecting every sorrow, a healer who bleeds while tending wounds that aren't theirs. When people say, "You're too sensitive," the empath smiles faintly. They wish others knew how heavy that sensitivity feels. It's not drama. It's not weakness. It's an endless awareness, like hearing every note in a symphony no one else can hear. Over time, they start confusing feeling with being. Someone's anger becomes their heartbeat. Someone's grief becomes their breath. Their empathy becomes identity. And that's when the quiet pain begins. Not from others hurting them, but from losing the boundary between me and you. They lie awake at night after comforting a friend, wondering why they feel drained. They walk away from arguments they didn't start, still trembling with emotions that aren't theirs. They wonder why they cry after goodbyes that shouldn't have mattered. It's because every human encounter leaves an imprint, and their soul, porous and open, keeps collecting ghosts. Yet within that ache lies a strange kind of wisdom. Empaths see what the world hides, the unspoken wounds, the silent kindness, the fleeting beauty of being human. They notice the way a person's eyes soften before forgiveness, or how despair smells like rain. They are the poets of the invisible. But even poets need rest. Feeling too much for too long erodes the self, like a river carving stone. So one day, the empath begins to withdraw, not out of bitterness, but necessity. The noise of humanity becomes too loud, too sharp. Silence, once unbearable, now becomes a shelter. They start declining invitations, turning off notifications, choosing empty rooms over conversations. But to the empath, it's survival. It's the only way to hear their own heartbeat again after years of echoing everyone else's. And in that stillness, a revelation quietly blooms. I am not meant to carry the world's emotions. I am meant to witness them. That is the first real awakening, the moment they realize that empathy without boundaries is self-erasure, and that feeling everything is not the goal. Understanding it is. When the world becomes too loud, the empath begins to vanish. Not in anger, not in rejection, but in quiet self-preservation. They start slipping away from gatherings that once felt warm. They mute group chats, cancel plans, turn off the music that once gave them peace. The noise of life, the endless chatter, the unspoken tension feels like sandpaper against their skin. In solitude, they finally breathe. Yet at first, that silence is terrifying. The empath's heart has always pulsed to the rhythm of others. Now, in the absence of those sounds, they must confront their own. They sit in rooms that echo. They hear their heartbeat like a stranger knocking at the door. For the first time, they feel the full weight of their own presence, and it feels foreign. Withdrawal is not escape. It is the beginning of clarity. But clarity rarely comes gently. Without the distraction of other people's emotions, their own suppressed feelings rise, long ignored, long buried. The empath who once absorbed the world now faces the storm within. Tears come not from sadness, but from release. They cry for years of silent caretaking, for every moment they carried someone else's sorrow while pretending to be fine. They realize how much of their life has been lived as a mirror, reflecting, never seen. But within that ache lies something pure. In the quiet, they start noticing the small details that never needed to be fixed. The sound of rain, the stillness between breaths, the way sunlight lingers on a wall. The world stops being a battlefield of emotions and becomes, for a moment, simply present. People misunderstand this phase. They think the empath has become distant, cold, even selfish. But isolation is not a wall. It's a cocoon. Something sacred is forming inside. The empath, who once gave everything, is slowly learning that to feel less is not to love less, it is to love wiser. As weeks pass, their sensitivity begins to change shape. It no longer floods outward uncontrollably. It deepens inward, grounding itself. They start sensing not just the emotions of others, but the subtle pulse of their own soul. The silence that once frightened them now feels like home. In this sacred withdrawal, the empath begins to understand. Feeling the world doesn't mean carrying it. Compassion doesn't mean exhaustion. Love doesn't mean self-erasure. The space they once feared, solitude, becomes the soil in which their true self can finally grow roots. And then comes the realization, quiet but unmistakable: I am not here to absorb the world's pain. I am here to remain whole in the presence of it. That truth transforms the empath from victim to vessel. Not a sponge that soaks, but a river that flows. What once overwhelmed them now moves through them. What once drowned them now passes like waves over stone. Withdrawal was never disappearance. It was return to self, to stillness, to strength. At first, the silence feels like exile. Then, slowly, it becomes medicine. The empath begins to understand that solitude is not the absence of love, but the space where real love can breathe. The world, once deafening, now hums in softer tones. They wake up one morning and realize that the ache in their chest has loosened, not because the world stopped hurting, but because they stopped confusing its pain with their own. In this sacred stillness, they start to rebuild themselves from the inside out. They learn boundaries, not as walls, but as gentle rivers guiding energy to where it belongs. They notice how peace is born not from control, but from surrender. Instead of absorbing emotions, they now witness them like watching rain fall on a lake without rippling the surface. Each day in solitude peels away another false layer. The rescuer, the pleaser, the healer who believed they were responsible for everyone's wounds. Beneath those identities, something timeless begins to emerge. The pure awareness that existed before empathy became a burden. The empath discovers that they were never meant to save others. They were meant to see them, and seeing is enough. They begin to practice the art of still presence. When emotions arise, they no longer drown in them. They breathe through them. When someone nearby carries pain, they don't absorb it. They offer silence as sanctuary. A glance, a calm breath, a steady energy. Healing, they realize, doesn't require fixing. It requires being. The transformation is subtle but profound. They start feeling joy again. Not the euphoric, fleeting kind that depends on others, but a quiet joy that hums beneath everything, even sorrow. They understand that empathy without self-awareness is chaos. But with self-awareness, it becomes compassion, clear, grounded, infinite. One evening, sitting beneath a dim light, they smile without reason. The silence that once frightened them now feels alive, full of whispers, peace, and presence. They sense something vast flowing through them, an energy that is not theirs, yet somehow belongs deeply to them. The empath has stopped taking in and started radiating out. They realize that empathy was never meant to be absorption. It was meant to be resonance. When tuned correctly, their energy doesn't echo pain, it harmonizes it. They no longer fight the world's noise. They tune it into music. Every interaction becomes a note in the great symphony of being. From that stillness, compassion matures into wisdom. They understand now that some people must walk through darkness to remember the light. That not every suffering requires intervention. That letting others fall can sometimes be the highest act of love. True kindness, they see, is not interference, it's trust in the soul's journey. And through this inner rebirth, the empath becomes something new, not a rescuer, not a victim, but a quiet lighthouse. They stand in calm waters, shining gently, not chasing lost ships, but guiding them home by presence alone. For the first time, they are not tired of feeling. They are grateful for it. Because now, every emotion, theirs or another's, passes through, like wind, through an open window. Nothing clings, nothing poisons, only movement, only awareness. And as they sit in that peace, one truth crystallizes. To feel deeply is not to drown. It is to remember that you are the ocean. That is the essence of their rebirth. The moment empathy transforms from burden into blessing. After the stillness, wisdom begins to bloom, not in words, but in paradoxes. It lives between them. Every deep realization carries a contradiction, and learning to hold both sides without breaking is what transforms sensitivity into mastery. To feel everything, you must learn to feel nothing. At first, this sounds cruel, impossible, even. But the empath learns that feeling nothing does not mean apathy. It means presence without reaction. It is the still surface of the lake that reflects everything without drowning in it. The moment you stop resisting pain, it flows through you. When you no longer cling to joy, it becomes infinite. Feeling deeply is not about diving, it's about being water. To helping everyone can hurt you. For years, the empath believed love meant saving others. Now, they understand love sometimes means stepping back. To interfere in someone's lesson is to delay their awakening. True compassion is not feeding dependence, it's trusting their capacity to rise. Some people must fall. Some must wander. The empath no longer rescues. They witness with kindness. They have learned the difference between a savior and a light. Silence speaks louder than words. Once they explained themselves endlessly, trying to make others understand their sensitivity. Now they know understanding doesn't come from speech, but from presence. Silence holds power words can't carry. It allows energy to settle, emotions to breathe, and truth to reveal itself. In stillness, they say more than they ever did by talking. The empath's greatest wisdom becomes their quiet. For you are not their healer. Every empath wants to heal, but healing is not something one person does to another. It is a remembering that unfolds within. The empath's job was never to fix others, but to embody wholeness so others remember their own. Not mechanics. By holding space, not control, they allow others to awaken at their own pace. They have learned that to carry someone is to deny them their wings. 5. Your sensitivity is not weakness. It is wisdom. Society calls them too emotional. But emotion, in its pure form, is data from the soul. The empath's sensitivity is not fragility. It's a superconductor for awareness. Where others see chaos, they perceive patterns. Where others numb, they feel, and in feeling, they understand. What once was shame now becomes strength. Their empathy is not an open wound anymore. It's an open door through which light flows. As these 5 paradoxes settle into their being, the empath no longer sees themselves as cursed. They understand that every gift carries weight and every burden hides a key. Feeling deeply is not a punishment, it's participation in the grand symphony of consciousness. And when they step back into the world, they no longer ask, "Why do I feel so much?" They ask instead, "How can I honor what I feel without becoming it?" That is when empathy evolves into enlightenment. The paradoxes are no longer riddles, they are rhythm. The empath no longer survives by avoiding pain. They live by transcending it. When the empath finally steps back into the world, something has changed. The air feels lighter. The noise, once unbearable, no longer pierces. It flows around them like wind through trees. The same people still speak too loudly. The same rooms still carry tension. But now their heart beats at its own rhythm. The empath has found the art of the light touch, living fully, but without clinging. They walk through life as if through water, every emotion rippling softly, then settling. They laugh when laughter comes, cry when sadness visits, but neither owns them. The storm still rages outside, yet the center remains calm. The difference is not that the world grew quieter. It's sad they learned to listen differently. They no longer mistake empathy for obligation. They feel everything but carry nothing. They can sit beside a grieving friend without drowning, listen to anger without burning, witness suffering without shutting down. What once overwhelmed them now moves through them, leaving wisdom in its wake. This is the light touch, seriousness without weight, love without attachment, awareness without control. Life becomes a dance again, not a burden, not a mission. Every encounter is a step, every silence a note, every goodbye just a change in rhythm. The empath has stopped performing. They've started playing. They see now that everyone, conscious or not, is part of this cosmic play. Each soul acting out lessons, mistakes, miracles. They no longer judge those who sleepwalk through life, because they, too, once did. Compassion deepens, but the old urgency to fix disappears. They can love without needing to change anyone. Moments that used to feel draining now feel sacred. A conversation becomes a meditation. A pause becomes a prayer. Their presence, once fragile, has turned magnetic, calm, yet alive. People feel safe around them without knowing why. They radiate quiet steadiness, the kind that says, you don't have to be anyone else here. This is what the empath's evolution was always leading to, from absorbing energy to transforming it, to becoming it. They no longer feel for the world, they flow with it. Their empathy is not reaction, it's harmony. Like a musician attuned to the entire orchestra, they can sense dissonance, but no longer suffer from it. They simply adjust their note. They've learned that control was never the goal. Presence was that love is not about protection, but participation. That peace isn't found in hiding, but in dancing lightly with all that is. And as they move through their days, they begin to laugh again, a quiet, knowing laughter, the kind that comes when you realize you were never trapped. You were simply learning how to breathe underwater. At night, they rest without the weight of the world pressing on their chest. They've stopped carrying other people's storms and started becoming the sky that holds them. Nothing to fix, nothing to prove. Just a vast stillness that embraces every thundercloud and every ray of light the same. That's the essence of the light touch, to walk through life, open and free, touching everything deeply, but leaving no fingerprints behind. To love like water, to flow, not to drown. That is how the empath finally learns to live. In time, the empath realizes that peace is not a state of emotion. It is a set of laws written deep within consciousness. They are not rules made by society or morality or culture. They are cosmic laws, soft but absolute, guiding every soul that chooses to awaken through feeling. And as they walk through life, the empath begins to live by these invisible principles, not memorized, but embodied. One you can feel deeply without carrying it all. Feeling was never the problem. Attachment was. The empath now understands that emotions are like weather. They move through, not into, those who stand still. When anger arrives, they breathe. When sorrow visits, they listen. When joy appears, they dance. They no longer ask, "Why am I feeling this?" They ask, "What is this feeling trying to show me?" In that shift, pain transforms into wisdom, and empathy becomes a window, not a wound. 2. You can love without losing yourself. Before, love meant merging until identity dissolved. Now, love is a sacred meeting between two complete souls. The empath no longer gives to prove worth. They give from abundance. They know that true love doesn't require sacrifice of the self, but the presence of it. It's not about losing boundaries. It's about knowing them so well that love flows freely within them. The healthiest love says, "I am me, you are you, and together we are more, not less." 3. Protecting your peace is an act of compassion. Once, they thought peace was selfish, something stolen from others' pain. Now they see that protecting peace is what allows them to be kind without depletion. Without peace, empathy turns into exhaustion. With peace, it becomes medicine. Every no they say to chaos becomes a yes to clarity. Every time they walk away from noise, they return closer to their soul. And through that stillness, they offer the world something rarer than help, stability. For energy is currency. Spend it wisely. Every thought, every interaction, every moment of attention is an exchange. The empath now treats energy like sacred gold, not hoarded, but invested in what nourishes life. They stop giving energy to gossip, to drama, to things that shrink their light. They learn to recharge through nature, solitude, art, stillness. What once drained them now fuels them, because they choose where to flow. Where attention goes, creation follows. They no longer pour their light into holes, they pour it into growth. 5. Silence is not withdrawal, it's mastery. The empath no longer speaks to fill silence. They speak when truth vibrates. Their quiet is not emptiness, it is full of awareness. Silence is their way of listening to what the world forgets to say. It's where intuition lives, where energy reorganizes, where the self returns home. Silence is not the absence of connection. It's its highest form. Because only in silence can one hear the music of existence. Living by these cosmic rules, the empath becomes something else entirely, not a caretaker, but a conscious participant in creation. They move like wind, invisible yet undeniable. They heal not by doing, but by being. They love not to save, but to awaken. Their presence alone shifts energy in a room. No longer enslaved by empathy, they have become empathy itself. Pure awareness wrapped in human form. And in that awareness, the universe whispers its final truth. You were never meant to feel for the world. You were meant to feel as the world. That is the moment the empath stops searching for belonging, because they realize they have always belonged to everything. When the empath returns to the world, they are no longer the same. The quiet solitude that once felt like distance has turned into depth. They walk among people again in the same cities, the same crowds, but now their steps are lighter, their presence clearer, their eyes softer. They no longer react to life. They compose it. This is the birth of the creative player, the empath, who has remembered that existence is not a burden to survive, but a play to perform consciously. They engage with life like an artist who knows the difference between chaos and rhythm. When conflict arises, they don't resist it. They study its texture. When someone lies, they see through it, yet choose compassion over contempt. They have learned the art of staying in the world without being consumed by it. For them, empathy is now a tool of creation. Every feeling becomes a brushstroke, every interaction a note in an endless melody. They listen deeply before speaking, move slowly before acting. Their timing is guided not by fear or duty, but by resonance. Where once they sought approval, they now seek alignment. They no longer drown in energy, they conduct it. People sense something different about them. In their presence, tension eases. The loud grow quieter. The lost find direction without being told. The empath doesn't preach, they embody. Their silence carries gravity. Their laughter carries peace. They are the calm in the center of everyone else's storm, not detached, but deeply anchored. They understand now that true influence doesn't come from trying to change the world. It comes from embodying what the world is yearning to remember. They don't chase outcomes, they tune them. They don't argue with darkness, they shine through it. Like a musician who knows every wrong note can be folded into harmony. They use their awareness to create coherence wherever they go. The creative player lives between two worlds, half in silence, half in participation. They can join the noise without losing their stillness, love humanity without losing faith in solitude. They become what ancient mystics called the bridge, the one who walks among dreams with open eyes. Now, instead of asking, "How can I help?" they ask, "How can I be the help?" Instead of absorbing pain, they offer presence. Instead of carrying burdens, they become space for burdens to dissolve. And yet, they never lose their humanness. They still cry. They still falter. They still forget. But now, they know how to return to silence, to center, to truth. They play life like a sacred improvisation, aware that the melody may change, but the musician never does. Their compassion no longer drains them. They understand that their energy, their consciousness, is the same essence that moves the tides, the wind, the stars. The empath has become awareness in motion, participating in the dance of creation, not as a victim, but as a composer. And when they meet another empath, lost or tired or fading, they no longer rush to rescue. They simply smile, and in that smile, transmit a message without words. You don't need to stop feeling. You just need to stop forgetting who you are. Because in remembering that every empath becomes a player, not in a game of survival, but in the art of awakening. The creative player moves through life with lightness, yet everything they touch grows calm, beautiful, and alive. They've mastered the paradox, to be fully human, yet more than human, to act, but not to cling, to feel, but not to fall. That is the power of awakened empathy, to live as the universe itself, breathing through a human heart, creating, witnessing, and smiling at the miracle of it all. Dawn breaks softly. The world stirs again. Cars hum, people rush, cities wake. And somewhere among them walks the empath, quiet, unhurried, breathing with the rhythm of it all. Nothing outside has truly changed. The noise, the suffering, the endless search for meaning. Yet everything feels different because the one who perceives has changed. They move through the crowd like light through glass, touching everything, holding nothing. Each face they see is no longer a mystery to solve, but a fragment of the same consciousness looking back. They no longer divide life into good and bad, pain and joy, shadow and light. They see now that it was all one movement, the universe experiencing itself through infinite hearts. The empath pauses on a bridge at sunrise. Below, the river glows in gold and silver ripples. The same river that once mirrors their tears now mirrors their calm. They realize that emotions were never the enemy. They were messengers carrying truth from one shore of the soul to the other. And all this time, they weren't drowning in feelings. They were the river, The mind whispers, as if from afar. What now? What is the purpose of all this feeling? And the heart replies, softly, to live it, to love it, to let it pass. There is a profound freedom in that answer. They no longer seek escape from sensitivity, nor pride themselves on endurance. They learned that awakening doesn't erase pain. It dissolves the self that resists it. Suffering ends not when life stops hurting, but when we stop identifying as the hurt. From this understanding, the empath gazes at the world not as an outsider, but as a witness of its beauty. They notice how even sorrow has its light, the way a child's cry carries purity, the way grief reveals love, the way silence holds forgiveness. It was never about becoming less sensitive. It was about becoming more conscious. And consciousness, once awakened, no longer clings. It moves like water, gentle, necessary, unstoppable. It touches everything, yet remains untouched. This is what it means to feel deeply without breaking, to be the ocean that welcomes every wave. As they walk away from the bridge, the empath smiles at strangers, not out of obligation, but out of recognition. They see the same sacred spark in every pair of eyes, the same confusion, the same longing, the same secret wish to be understood. And suddenly, there is no separation. Every soul is a note in the same vast song. They whisper to themselves, half prayer, half realization. I am not here to fix the world. I am here to remember that I am the world. And by remembering, it heals. The wind moves gently through the morning light. A single leaf spirals down onto the water, floats for a moment, then disappears into the flow. Nothing is lost. Everything continues. That is the secret the empath carries now, the peace of one who has stopped fighting the current. The knowing that life doesn't need to be conquered or understood to be holy. It only needs to be witnessed, embraced, and allowed to move. And so they walk on, not as savior, not as victim, but as silence itself made visible. No longer asking, why do I feel so much? Now whispering, thank God I do, because feeling is the proof of being alive, and awareness, that quiet stage within, is where existence performs its most beautiful play. As the city awakens around them, the empath disappears into the crowd, not as someone lost, but as someone finally home. You are not the awakener. You are the awakening itself. You are not the river's current. You are the water endlessly flowing. And with that, the story ends not with a conclusion, but a continuation. For the awakened empath knows there is no end, only the gentle, eternal act of feeling and letting it all be. So now I ask you, the one who feels deeply, who has carried too much Who has mistaken empathy for weakness? When was the last time you allowed yourself to simply be? To feel everything without drowning, to love without losing yourself, to sit in silence and call it peace. Maybe you are the empath in this story. Maybe you've been told you're too soft, too emotional, too fragile for this world. But what if that sensitivity was never a flaw? What if it was your bridge to truth? Because the world doesn't need fewer feelers. It needs hearts that can feel consciously. It needs people who can walk through chaos and still choose presence. Who can touch everything deeply but leave no scars behind. If this story whispered something to your soul, stay with us here on the silent stage, where we don't teach, we remember. Where silence speaks louder than words, and where every video is not just watched, but felt. Take a breath. Let the noise fade. And remember, you are not here to escape the world. You are here to awaken within it.